My fiancé left my daughter alone and went on a shopping spree with my credit card. Then I returned the ring and changed the locks forever. My fiancé left my daughter home alone while taking her own kids out for dinner and mini golf, then had the audacity to roll her eyes when I confronted her. "Your kid is fine. Mine needed new outfits and fun," she snapped while showing off the designer bags she'd charged to my credit card. When I questioned the expense, she threatened to cancel our wedding unless I proved my commitment with a larger diamond. I returned the ring after my daughter finally told me she'd been left alone 12 times, while my fiancé used my house keys to bring random men over who called her single mommy. Hey everyone, I, 39, male, just ended my engagement with my fiancée Kristen, 37, female, after discovering how she's been treating my daughter Lily, 10, female, and stealing my money. It's an absolute mess, and I'm still processing everything. For context, I'm a senior electrical engineer at a power plant making decent money, $112,000 per year with good benefits. I own my house outright, inherited from my grandparents, drive a paid-off 2019 F-150, and have managed to put away a solid college fund for Lily, despite being a single dad for most of her life. Lily's mom, Sarah, walked out when she was only 3. No calls, no birthday cards, nothing. She just ghosted us completely to run off with some CrossFit instructor she met at the gym. Sarah dumped all the parenting responsibility on me while I was working 50-plus hour weeks trying to get promoted. The only silver lining was Sarah's mom, Janet, who has been an absolute lifesaver helping me raise Lily. Janet only lives 15 minutes away and has always stepped up when I needed childcare. Being a single dad is tough as hell, but we've built a good life. Lily's a great kid, quiet, smart, into books and science stuff. She's always been a homebody, content to read or draw for hours. I've tried to give her a stable, loving home after her mom bailed. 4 years ago, I met Kristen at my coworker's summer barbecue. She was recently divorced, with 2 daughters from her previous marriage, Maddie, 15, female, and Chloe, 12, female. They have this unusual custody arrangement where Kristen gets them January through June, and their dad gets them the other half of the year. Should have been my first red flag, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Kristen was gorgeous, confident, and way out of my league. Honestly, when we started dating, she seemed perfect. She was amazing with Lily, always bringing her little gifts, doing her hair in fancy braids, taking her for ice cream. She filled that mother figure role that had been missing in Lily's life. Lily absolutely adored her and would get so excited whenever Kristen came over. For over 3 years, everything seemed perfect. Like I'd finally hit the relationship jackpot after years of focusing just on work and raising my daughter. Last year, I proposed with a $7,800 ring, way more than I should have spent. But I was convinced she was the one, and we were planning the wedding for this summer. I thought I was finally getting that complete family I'd always wanted for Lily. The problem started in September when Kristen and her daughters moved into my house. It's not a mansion by any means. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, about 1,800 square feet. Comfortable, but not huge. Lily has always had her own room with her favorite space-themed decorations and bookshelves I built her. It's her safe space, especially since her mom left. I've always tried to keep things stable and consistent for her. At first, everything seemed fine. Lily was excited to have sisters, and Kristen was still being the attentive, almost stepmom. But within weeks, little things started happening. Kristen began making comments about the house being a bit small for 5 people, and how most families our size have at least 4 bedrooms. She'd send me Zillow listings for much larger, more expensive homes in upscale neighborhoods, saying things like, "Wouldn't this be perfect for us?" By November, about 2 months after moving in, Kristen brought up bedroom arrangements during dinner. She wanted Maddie, her oldest, to have her own room. This would mean Lily would need to share with Chloe, and I'd lose my home office where I sometimes work remotely during emergency calls. Her argument was that since Maddie was a teenager and only lived with us half the year, she deserved her own space for privacy reasons. I disagreed immediately. First, Lily has always had her own room in this house. It's her territory, her safe space. Second, I genuinely needed that office for work when I'm on call, which happens frequently at a power plant. And third, this was my house that I owned outright before Kristen ever came into the picture. I just didn't think it was fair to make Lily give up her room when she's lived here her whole life. Kristen's response? Other men would be more accommodating to their fiancé's children. "You're prioritizing Lily over my girls." That comment felt like a punch to the gut. Of course I prioritize my daughter in her own home. Wouldn't any good parent? I tried explaining that forcing Lily to give up her space would make her feel pushed aside in her own house, but Kristen just rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. Later that week, I overheard Kristen on the phone with someone complaining that I was cheap and controlling because I wouldn't renovate the basement into another bedroom, which would cost well over $20,000 I didn't want to spend. We eventually dropped the bedroom subject, but things remained tense. Then came the spending. I had stupidly added Kristen as an authorized user on my main credit card for emergencies and household expenses. Within weeks, I noticed charges from Sephora, Nordstrom, and other high-end stores. When I asked about a $430 charge at Lululemon, Kristen casually said she'd picked up a few things for the girls and seemed offended that I even questioned it. Looking back, Christmas was another huge red flag. Kristen spent an absurd amount on gifts for her daughters. On my credit card, AirPods Pro for Maddie, a $300 tablet for Chloe, designer clothes for both. Meanwhile, Lily got a clearance sweater that was 2 sizes too small and a generic coloring book. When Lily looked disappointed Christmas morning, Kristen actually said, "Not everyone can get exactly what they want, sweetie. That's life." The turning point came last month. I got called into work unexpectedly for a 12-hour emergency shift on a Saturday. This happens occasionally in my job. When something at the power plant goes critical, I'm one of the few people qualified to fix certain systems. I make good overtime, but the hours are brutal. Usually when this happens, Lily goes to Janet's house. But this time, Kristen insisted she would take care of Lily. "Don't worry, we'll have a girls' day," she promised. "It'll be fun." Lily seemed excited about spending time with Kristen and her stepsisters, so I didn't call Janet. When I got home around 9:30 p.m., exhausted after fixing a major electrical issue that could have caused outages across half the county, I found Lily sitting alone in the living room watching TV. She was still in her pajamas from that morning, her hair unbrushed, looking sad and withdrawn. When I asked how her day was, she just shrugged. That's when I noticed the Taco Bell bag on the coffee table. The food inside was completely cold, and it was just a plain bean burrito, not even the cheese and rice one Lily likes. "Where are Kristen and the girls?" I asked. "They went out," Lily said quietly. "Kristen said they'd bring dinner back for me." After more gentle questioning, I learned the full story. Kristen had taken her daughters to the Cheesecake Factory, Lily's favorite restaurant, then to play mini golf, and finally to the mall for a shopping spree. They had left Lily home alone for over 5 hours, a 10-year-old kid alone, with no phone calls to check on her, in a house she couldn't even lock properly because she didn't have a key. I was livid, but tried to stay calm for Lily's sake. I gave her a proper dinner, helped her shower, and tucked her in with her favorite stuffed penguin. Then I waited for Kristen to return. When she finally arrived around 10:15 p.m. with her daughters all carrying multiple shopping bags, I asked to speak with her privately in our bedroom. "I think we need to talk about today," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm really disappointed that you left Lily out of your family outing, especially when I wasn't home." Kristen immediately got defensive. She was fine. The TV was right there, and I left her food. Besides, she would have just complained about being bored at mini golf. "That's not the point," I said. "She's 10 years old. You left her alone for more than 5 hours without checking on her. And you took your daughters to Lily's favorite restaurant without her." Kristen's response floored me. "It's not my fault she wanted to stay home in her pajamas all day." This was a flat-out lie. Lily later told me Kristen never invited her, just told her they were going out and would bring food back. When I pressed her, Kristen turned it around on me. "Why is it okay for you to do things with just Lily, but I can't have special time with my daughters? You took Lily to that cat cafe last month without inviting us." I explained that since her daughters moved in, my one-on-one outings with Lily had been practical things like grocery shopping and one vet visit for her cat. These weren't fun family activities like dinner, mini golf, and a shopping spree that I later discovered cost over $350 on my credit card. The argument ended with Kristen storming off to sleep in the guest room, claiming I was overreacting and always taking Lily's side. I checked my online banking app that night and discovered Kristen had spent nearly $500 that day between the restaurant, mini golf, and shopping. Not once had she mentioned these plans to me. The following week was incredibly tense. Kristen and I barely spoke beyond necessary household coordination. I also noticed more concerning financial activity. She'd started using my Amazon account to order expensive things for herself and her daughters. Designer clothes, AirPods for Maddie, a $300 hairstyling tool. When I checked my credit card statement, I saw over $1,700 in charges from the past 2 weeks alone. Then Friday happened. Kristen was taking Maddie and Chloe to the dentist for checkups using my dental insurance that I'd foolishly added them to. As they were heading out the door, Kristen made a comment loud enough for Lily to hear, "Let's go, girls. And Lily, don't worry, we're just going to the dentist this time. Nothing fun, so don't feel offended you're not coming." The sarcasm in her voice was unmistakable, and Lily's face just fell. I lost my temper and called Kristen's behavior childish and inappropriate. She fired back that I was being ridiculous about the whole situation and too sensitive about Lily. Later that evening, after seeing a $120 charge at a nearby salon while they were supposedly just at the dentist, I confronted Kristen again. She claimed they had a little time to kill before the appointment. When I brought up the pattern of excluding Lily, she got defensive. "Look, I only get my daughters for 6 months of the year," she said. "Is it so wrong to want special time with just them? You don't understand the pressure of shared custody." Then she said something that really hit me hard. "Besides, Lily's not exactly the coolest kid. Maddie feels embarrassed around her sometimes. The age gap is too big. It's awkward having her tag along everywhere." I was stunned. "She's 10, I said. "She's supposed to be a little kid, not cool by teenage standards. And if we're going to be a family, we need to include everyone." Kristen's response, "Why are you so cheap about everything? You make good money and this is what it costs to have a family like ours, to be with a woman like me." That last part stuck with me. A woman like me, as if she was doing me some kind of favor by being with me. Later that night, I caught her snooping through my financial documents in my office drawer. When I asked what she was doing, she claimed she was just looking for a pen. That's when I started to put the pieces together about what this relationship was really about. After our fight, Kristen suddenly switched tactics. She started love-bombing me, making my favorite meals, being extra affectionate, acting like the perfect fiancé again. I thought maybe we could work things out when she finally acknowledged she could have handled the mini-golf situation differently. I suggested that we could coordinate separate activities on the same days so everyone could have their special time without anyone feeling left out. Kristen seemed reluctant but agreed to try. I also quietly canceled her authorized user status on my credit card, saying the card company needed to issue new ones due to suspicious activity. She seemed way too upset about this for someone who wasn't abusing the privilege. The following weekend, I planned to take Lily to the Science Museum to see the new dinosaur exhibit she'd been talking about for weeks. I told Kristen about our plans 3 days in advance, suggesting she might want to do something special with Maddie and Chloe that day too. She said she'd think about it. She also asked for $200 in cash for groceries and household stuff, which I gave her, wanting to believe we were getting back on track. The morning of our museum trip, I went to wake Lily and found her already awake, crying into her pillow. When I asked what was wrong, she showed me Instagram messages from her friend across the street. The friend had sent pictures of Kristen and her daughters at the mall the day before. They'd gone shopping at Lululemon and Sephora and to see the new Marvel movie, all things Lily would have absolutely loved. "They didn't even ask me if I wanted to go, Dad," Lily said between sobs. Maddie posted all these pictures on Instagram saying it was just us girls' day and how much fun they had. Even worse, I discovered that Lily's iPad was cracked. When I asked what happened, Lily reluctantly admitted that Chloe had borrowed it without asking, dropped it, and when Lily complained, Kristen told her to stop being so materialistic and that sharing is caring. This iPad was Lily's birthday present that she'd saved her allowance for months to help pay for. Kristen hadn't even told me about the incident. When confronted about both the mall trip and the iPad, Kristen didn't even try to deny it. "I didn't realize I needed permission to take my kids shopping," she said with an eye roll. "And it's just a screen. It still works." Lily's being dramatic again. She claimed they'd made a spontaneous decision after school to go to the mall, but Maddie later let slip that they had been planning the movie trip for days. And of course, Kristen had no intention of paying to fix or replace the iPad. That weekend, I took Lily to Janet's house more than usual. I needed time to think, and Lily clearly needed a break from the tension. Janet noticed something was wrong and asked what was happening. After I explained, she offered to let Lily stay with her more often and reminded me that Lily's well-being needed to be my priority. Then Janet mentioned something concerning. Kristen had called her asking about my finances, including whether my house was really paid off and how much I had in savings. Janet, being the smart woman she is, had been vague and non-committal, but she thought I should know. This was a massive red flag. Why was Kristen interrogating my former mother-in-law about my financial situation behind my back? By this point, I was deeply suspicious. I installed a small security camera in the living room, completely legal in my state, after noticing some of my stuff kept getting moved around. What I saw over the next week shocked and disgusted me. When I wasn't home, Kristen was telling Lily she couldn't sit on certain furniture because it was for family, making her eat dinner at the kitchen counter instead of with everyone else at the dining table, and going through my mail and financial statements. She'd even made comments to her daughters within Lily's earshot about how some people are just temporary in our lives, and blood is thicker than water. One particularly awful clip showed Kristen telling Lily that her artwork wasn't good enough to be displayed on the refrigerator, while putting up Chloe's mediocre drawings. "We need to save room for actual family artwork," she said, as Lily's face crumpled. The breaking point came on a Wednesday. I came home from work to find the house empty except for Lily, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. She told me Kristen had left around 2:30 p.m., saying they'd be back for dinner. It was almost 6 p.m. I also noticed Lily's cat, Whiskers, was locked in the garage. When I asked why, Lily said Kristen had put him there because he sheds too much on Maddie's clothes. I texted Kristen asking where everyone was. She replied they were at Maddie's volleyball game, which had apparently been scheduled for weeks. This was the first I'd heard about it, even though I was the one who usually drove Lily to her science club meetings. I asked why Lily wasn't invited, and Kristen responded that she wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway and it would be boring for her. When they finally got home around 7:30 p.m., I noticed they'd stopped for ice cream. Maddie was still finishing her sundae, Chloe had a chocolate-dipped cone, and Kristen had some fancy parfait thing. No ice cream for Lily, of course. They didn't even bring her anything. And Kristen had the nerve to ask me for $60 for gas money since they'd had to drive across town for the game. That night, after the girls went to bed, I confronted Kristen with everything. The security footage, the financial snooping, the pattern of excluding and belittling Lily, and the unauthorized spending. Kristen got defensive immediately and tried to gaslight me. "You're spying on me? What kind of controlling freak does that?" She accused me of trying to control her relationship with her daughters and said I didn't understand the pressure she felt during their months together. She claimed she was trying to make up for lost time and that I was paranoid about the financial stuff. I pointed out that she seemed perfectly capable of including Lily in activities before we lived together and asked what had changed. She stumbled over her answer, eventually saying living together was different and more complicated. I also mentioned that I'd checked my bank statements and found over $5,000 in unexplained withdrawals and charges over the past 2 months. When I pressed her on why living together should mean treating Lily worse rather than better, and where my money was going, she finally snapped and showed her true colors. "Fine. You want the truth? I resent that your precious Lily gets to stay in her own room while my daughters have to share. You're prioritizing her over my kids, so why shouldn't I prioritize my kids over her? As for the money," she sneered, "what's yours is mine once we're married. I'm just getting a head start on what I deserve. Do you know how many men would kill to be with someone like me? I could have dated doctors or lawyers, but I chose you. You should be grateful." Then came the real bombshell. She'd been talking to a realtor about our next steps, specifically selling my house after the wedding and buying a bigger place where everyone would be comfortable. She already had her eye on a $750,000 property in an upscale neighborhood that would require me to take out a massive mortgage. She'd even discussed this with her daughters, but never mentioned it to me or Lily. "This house is too small and outdated anyway," she said dismissively. "We need at least 5 bedrooms and a pool if we're going to be a proper family." When I asked why she'd never discussed any of this with me, she said, "Because you're so uptight about money. I knew you'd say no if I asked directly." She admitted she'd only agreed to move in with me because she thought she could convince me to upgrade once we were married. She saw me as a stable meal ticket with a good job and no debt, someone she could manipulate into providing the lifestyle she wanted. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Kristen was essentially admitting to deliberately excluding and mistreating a 10-year-old child because of a bedroom dispute, stealing my money, and planning to force me to sell my paid-off house. It was calculated, cruel, and completely changed how I saw her. "I think you should stay with a friend tomorrow night," I said quietly. "I need some time to think about all this." Kristen seemed to realize she'd revealed too much. She immediately started backpedaling, crying, and saying she didn't mean it, that she was just frustrated, that she loved me and Lily. But it was too late. I'd seen behind the mask, and there was no going back. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I was absolutely furious but knew I needed to be smart about this. By 6 a.m., I had a plan. I texted my boss that I needed a personal day, then called my lawyer buddy Rob for emergency advice. I also contacted my bank to freeze all my accounts and report potential fraud. I took Lily to Janet's house early that morning, explaining enough of the situation so Janet understood the seriousness without traumatizing Lily further. Janet was livid, but agreed to keep Lily for a few days while I sorted everything out. Next, I visited my bank in person to document the unauthorized withdrawals and file a formal fraud report. The bank manager was sympathetic and helped me set up entirely new accounts that Kristen had no access to. Then I made 2 more crucial calls, one to a locksmith and another to an off-duty police officer friend who agreed to be present as a witness while I confronted Kristen. I needed protection in case she tried to claim I was threatening or abusive. When I returned home, the locksmith had already changed all the locks. I waited for Kristen to return from whatever shopping spree she was on with my money. When she arrived around 2 p.m. with her daughters, all carrying more shopping bags, she couldn't get her key to work. When she saw me watching from the window, she started pounding on the door. I opened it with my police friend standing behind me, and her face went from anger to confusion. "Why the hell did you change the locks?" she demanded. I calmly invited her in to talk, making sure my officer friend was visible. Her daughters looked confused and scared. "Maddie, Chloe, why don't you go to your room for a bit?" I suggested. "Your mom and I need to talk about some adult things." Once they were gone, I laid it all out. "I know everything, Kristen. The unauthorized withdrawals from my account, the calls to Janet asking about my finances, the realtor you've been talking to about selling my house, and, most importantly, how you've been treating my daughter like garbage in her own home." Her face went white, then red with rage. "You've been spying on me, checking up on me. What kind of controlling jerk?" I cut her off. "Save it. I have security footage of how you treat Lily when I'm not here. I have bank statements showing you stole over $5,000 from me. I have a witness statement from the realtor you contacted. And I have text messages from Lily's phone showing how you told her that blood comes first and she needs to know her place in this family." I pulled out a folder with printouts of everything. Bank statements, screenshots of texts, and stills from the security footage showing her making Lily eat alone while everyone else sat at the table. This is theft, fraud, and child emotional abuse. Officer Davis here can explain the potential charges. My police friend stepped forward and explained that while he wasn't here officially, what I had documented could potentially lead to criminal charges for financial fraud and possibly child endangerment for leaving Lily alone for extended periods. Kristen started crying, those fake tears women use when they're caught. "You can't do this to me. We're getting married. I'm going to be Lily's stepmom." "Not anymore," I said, taking out the ring box. "The engagement is over. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from my house. Officer Davis will be present during that time to ensure nothing that belongs to me or Lily leaves this property. Your daughters can stay here until their father can arrange transportation, but you need to find somewhere else to go." "I have nowhere to go," she screamed. "You can't just throw me out." "You should have thought about that before you stole from me and mistreated my daughter," I replied calmly. "I suggest you call a friend or get a hotel room. I've already spoken to my attorney, and since you've never contributed to the mortgage and your name isn't on any paperwork for this house, you have no legal claim to stay here." She switched tactics faster than I could blink. Suddenly she was sobbing, grabbing my arm. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I was just stressed about the wedding. Please, I love you. I love Lily. I'll make it up to both of you." I removed her hand from my arm. "Save it for someone who hasn't seen the real you. You have 48 hours. After that, anything left behind will be considered abandoned property." The next 2 days were incredibly tense. Kristen alternated between begging, threatening, and crying as she packed her things under the watchful eye of either me, Janet, or my police friend. I documented everything she took, making sure none of my or Lily's belongings accidentally ended up in her suitcases. Maddie and Chloe were confused and upset, which I genuinely felt bad about. They weren't responsible for their mother's behavior. I pulled them aside and explained that while this wasn't their fault, their mom had done some things that meant we couldn't be together anymore. I told them they were welcome to stay in touch with Lily if they wanted. I contacted their father, Brian, explained the situation, and offered to pay for plane tickets to get them to his house early. He was surprisingly understanding and said this wasn't the first time Kristen had tried to use a relationship for financial gain. She did the same thing to me, he admitted. That's partly why we divorced. 2 weeks later, the real karma hit. Kristen had been staying in a cheap extended stay motel, frantically calling and texting me with alternating threats of legal action and desperate pleas to take her back. She'd been bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen, claiming I was abusive and controlling. Then her ex dropped a bomb on her. Brian, who'd been suspicious of Kristen's sudden improved lifestyle, had hired a private investigator months ago. The PI had documented Kristen using child support payments meant for the girls on personal luxuries, falsifying expenses, and lying about the girls' needs to increase payments. Now that I'd reached out to him with my own experience, he had all the evidence he needed. Brian filed for full custody and an emergency halt to all child support payments. He also filed fraud charges for the misused funds. When Kristen's next child support payment didn't arrive, she was suddenly completely broke. She had no job. She'd quit her part-time receptionist position when we got engaged, claiming she needed to focus on wedding planning. No savings. She'd blown through everything she'd stolen from me, and now no child support. A month after I kicked her out, I received a desperate email from Kristen. She'd been evicted from the motel for non-payment. Her credit cards were maxed out. She was sleeping in her car and getting food from community pantries. She begged me to help her just until she got back on her feet, promised to pay me back every penny, and swore she'd never mistreat Lily again. I forwarded the email to my lawyer without responding. He advised documenting everything but not engaging. She's trying to establish contact to either manipulate you or build a case that you've reconciled, he warned. 6 months later, I ran into Kristen at Walmart. I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She was wearing a Walmart employee vest and ringing up customers. When she saw me, her face went red with embarrassment. I didn't gloat or make a scene. I just nodded politely and went to a different checkout line. As I was leaving, she ran after me in the parking lot. "Mike, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry for everything. I've learned my lesson. I'm struggling so bad. I lost custody of my girls. I'm living in a studio apartment with 3 roommates and I can barely afford food." Part of me felt sorry for her, but then I remembered how she'd treated Lily. "I forgive you," I said simply. "But that doesn't mean I'll ever trust you again or help you financially. You made your choices." She broke down, crying in the parking lot as I drove away. Later that night, I received texts from a number I didn't recognize. Kristen using a friend's phone. She was begging me to take her back, saying she'd be the perfect stepmom to Lily and never ask for anything again. I blocked the number and filed a harassment report with the police just to document the pattern. Over the next few months, Kristen tried multiple tactics, having friends reach out, sending tearful handwritten letters, even showing up at my office. Each time I maintained firm boundaries and kept detailed records. Meanwhile, Lily was flourishing without the toxic presence in our home. She returned to her cheerful self. We redecorated her room, she chose a space theme, adopted another cat to keep Whiskers company, and spent quality time together. Janet remained a wonderful presence in our lives. And Lily even started occasional video calls with Maddie and Chloe, who were doing well with their dad. I recovered most of the stolen money through the fraud investigation, and my homeowner's insurance covered the cost of Lily's iPad. I even took some of that money and started a small side business I'd always dreamed about, custom woodworking in my garage. It's bringing in a nice extra income now. Last month, a full year after the blow-up, I received an unexpected call from Brian. He wanted to meet for coffee and warned me that Kristen was telling people she was getting back together with her fiancé, who owns his own business. She'd apparently been using my name to try to get loans and credit cards, claiming we were reconciling. I called my lawyer again, who helped me file for a restraining order based on the pattern of harassment and financial fraud attempts. The judge granted it, and Kristen is now legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home, Lily's school, or my workplace. The day after the restraining order was served, Kristen lost her job at Walmart for having a public meltdown. According to mutual acquaintances, she's now living with her parents in another state, working at a gas station, and telling anyone who will listen that I ruined her life. As for me and Lily, we're doing better than ever. I've started dating casually, a kindergarten teacher named Allison who understands that Lily comes first and has been amazing with her from day one. It's early days, but I'm cautiously optimistic. The bedroom that briefly belonged to Maddie and Chloe has been converted into a guest room, home office, woodworking design space. Sometimes when I'm working in there late at night, I think about how differently things could have gone if I hadn't caught on to Kristen's game. If there's one thing I've learned from this nightmare, It's that you can't compromise when it comes to your child's emotional safety. No relationship is worth watching your kids shrink into the background, feeling unwelcome in their own home. Lily deserves to grow up knowing she's a priority, not an inconvenience to be managed or excluded. And I deserve a partner who understands that Lily and I are a package deal, not just when it's convenient, but always. To the gold diggers of the world looking for their next meal ticket, karma's a bitch, and so am I when you mess with my kid.